guys. Thank you very much. Now, welcome back to Patrick Christie's tonight with me, Martin Daubney, standing in for Pat, who's enjoying his honeymoon. Now, back on GB News with us, and we've heard from the Labour Party, the Tories and the Lib Dems on the farming uproar that is rocking the entire nation. But now, we're going to hear from Reform UK's business and agriculture spokesman, Rupert Lowe, who joins me now. Rupert, welcome to the show. So we saw Nigel Farage in the midst today. You were there, the reformers were all there. What's your solution to agriculture? What would you do for the great British farmers?
Well, the first question, Martin, is why do we need inheritance tax at all? My opinion is inheritance tax is a death tax. It's levied on money that's already been taxed. And I'm hoping that Elon Musk is going to show us that the biggest root cause of the problem is too much state and not enough individual. And I think by cutting the size of the state, which is what we desperately need to do here, we will obviate the need for all these ridiculous taxes to fund this statist sort of experiment, which is failing. I was there today. I was greeted by some fantastic people. They're all very worried about their businesses, and I don't think it's just the farmers we should be talking about, because I think rattling down the track will be the small businesses who've also been brutally treated by this Labour Party. As somebody said earlier, they've had a go at the pensioners, the schools. They're having a go at small businesses, at the farmers. It's very difficult to understand what they think they're doing. The figures they're peddling in the interview I saw are complete and utter poppycock. They don't talk about or understand how farms work. Farms basically have huge amounts of capital tied up. So it's not just the value of the farm, it's the value of the machinery and the stock and everything else. So that when somebody dies, farmers know the actual value of their estate is not just the value of the land, it's the value of all that capital they've got tied up that produces a very, very low rate of return. And I honestly think these people are cynical enough to think they're going to, in as Elon Musk says, some sort of full commie way, try and break the backbone of Britain, i.e. the nation of shopkeepers that actually relies on continuity.
Rupert, it's easy to have a pop at the opposition, but if you were in power now, the Reform Party are in power, what would you do for British farmers?
Well, ultimately, Martin, the first thing we should do is get rid of inheritance tax, and then people wouldn't have to worry about the future of their business. These people they are the core of our communities, farmers and small businesses, and we've got to foster them. They are the key to, if you like, the continuity and the security of our entire country. Quite apart from the fact we're an overpopulated island, I can't for the life of me think why Labour would want to put at risk, our food supplies when ultimately, we are not producing enough food to feed ourselves. And, we need the farmers, we need the small businesses, and we need to foster people who are going to, if you like, grow the economy and employ what they have difficulty defining as working people.
OK, Rupert Lowe, I'm afraid we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the show tonight. That was Reform UK's business and agriculture spokesman, Rupert Lowe. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Quick thoughts now of my panel. We've got a quick couple of minutes. Conservative MP Greg Smith, let's start with you. So, abolish inheritance tax is something that Rupert Lowe said Reform would do, but Kemi Badenoch said that the Tories would do that earlier on today.
Well, Kemi's been very clear. In fact, since we had no sugarcoating it, the hiding we got in the general election in July, and we've had a total reset, we actually only have one solid locked-in policy, and that is to reverse Labour's changes to the family farm tax, agricultural property relief. Kemi has been absolutely clear on that, and that's locked-in Conservative policy for the next general election. But when we hear some of the other parties, Ed Davey on the stage, all the rhetoric, what do Lib Dems do when they actually get power somewhere? Take Oxfordshire Council. They have this most horrendous assault on local farmers by banning all meat and dairy from all council offices. They can come out with all the rhetoric all they like. We know that Lib Dems are no friends of the farmers.
OK, and I'll go to you, Bill Ramo. Quickly, you've got 2 minutes. You're a fan of inheritance tax. You'd like to tell us why. You might get a boo in this room, but tell us why you think it's a good idea.
Because it was actually the Liberal government in the early part of the last century that said, of course, wealthy people get there by dint of their hard work and their effort, but they get there by society as well, through schooling, through the health service and all the other support services. And it's right above a certain level that society gets a small proportion of that benefit back. And that's why we have, rightly in my view, inheritance tax. But let's come back to these changes. They are going to affect a very small proportion of farmers, and that's the reality.
Right. Well, is that true? Martin, just, Barry, we've got a quick minute. You have to
Very
make it sharpish.
briefly on inheritance tax. What the wealthy in this country have done is they've taken their income and they've turned it into capital assets and shielded it from tax. Now, poor people can't do that because actually they only get their income. They only get enough to live on, most of them. Yeah, absolutely.
We're talking about farmers, Barry. Real hard-working farmers. These guys have barely got anything to live on. That's what they keep saying.
I'm talking about inheritance tax, right? And the people who then take that income and they then put it into a capital asset, they then shield that from tax. And that's the way the wealthy become wealthier and the poor become poorer. And that's why our society has become increasingly unequal.
Okay, gentlemen, we've got to call time. Greg Smith, Bill Rambo, Barry Gardner. Thanks, my audience. That's the end of our first hour. But coming up, in the absence of the Prime Minister, who has jetted off to the G20, a sacrificial lamb was rolled out today and thrust forward by the Labour Party, tasked with the unenviable task of defending their decision to hit farmers with fresh taxes. Now, here's a very wide-eyed Environment Secretary, Steve Reed. Take a look at this.
This government's commitment to farming and to farmers is absolute. That's why we've allocated £5 billion to farming in the budget. That's the biggest amount of money in our country's history for sustainable food production. But we have to plug that £22 billion black hole in our public finances. Otherwise, we can't fix our public services like the broken National Health Service. So it's only right that we've had to ask the wealthiest landowners and the biggest farms to pay their fair share. But I would emphasise only around 500 farms will be affected. The vast majority of farmers will pay no more under the new scheme than they do under the current one.
He's got that Vietnam stare, hasn't he? He didn't want to be. He wants to be anywhere else on the planet, but there, all the authenticity, perhaps, of a hostage video. Greg Smith, do you think that sending somebody out like that, they have to do it, they have to trot out the same old line, but does it wash? Do you think the Labour Party, back to my original point, grasped the magnitude of how badly this has gone down with the farming community and indeed the wider Great British public, who've almost universally swept in support of farmers?
Well, look, Martin, tens of thousands of people don't turn up on Whitehall for no reason. And the crowd there this afternoon was absolutely electric at the same time as all being petrified for the future of their farms and the future of food production in this country. And it just doesn't wash when the Secretary of State or the Farming Minister comes on and says, oh, only very few people will pay it. When actually, if you talk to real farmers, if you listen, if you actually engage with the sector, you actually get the stories from the real farmers who have done the real maths that shows that they might have to sell up to a third of their farm to meet this tax bill. And that, just as I said earlier, makes them completely unviable. And to this point that land prices will go down, I'm sorry, that is just for the birds. We know what happens when farms do have to sell a bit of land. It's not bought by other farmers. It's not bought by young farmers trying to get into the industry. It's bought by property developers and energy companies and the people who are going to literally change the face of the countryside and reduce our food security, reduce our self-sufficiency in this country to a point where we're just going to become entirely reliant on imports.
Is that a fact? There you go. Barry Gardner, is that a fair point? Elon Musk got involved in this debate, saying this feels like full-blown Stalinism. It feels like collectivism taking land back into public ownership by forcing landowners out of business, pricing them out of the market. And there's a lot of farmers we've been speaking to on GBNews over these past few weeks saying they fear the farmland is going to be hoovered up for housing estates, for Angela Rayner, for solar farms, for Ed Miliband, and for wind farms, for this great British energy fallacy. A lot of people don't just think that the patchwork of the countryside is being changed. Is this actually a war on farmers in disguise?
Quite the contrary, Martin. Look, let me explain why. This government, as part of the budget, and our farmers, the two farmers here know this, has put the largest investment in sustainable farming that has ever been put. 5 billion over the next 2 years into the Sustainable Farming Initiative. You know what it is, because we've increased the ways in which farmers can access that money from 23 ways under the Conservative government to over 100 under the new regulations. Now, if you'll know that Minette Batters, who used to be the president of the NFU, put out in the Country Life this week, saying that 50% of farmers were earning between 0 and 25,000 a year. What Greg has to answer is, why after 14 years of a Conservative administration is that the income that farmers are getting? Okay, because they've had a bad deal from the government. What we're trying to do with the 5 billion that we're investing in the Sustainable Farming Initiative is to actually make farming profitable. And one of the ways of doing that, patchy what Greg has said, is actually to reduce the price of land, because as we know, 56% of the people
Barry, the
who
farmers
have
on the
claimed
front,
the inheritance
the farmers
tax,
on the front row here don't look convinced.
Well, I tell you who will be convinced, though, Martin. It's the people watching this who are not farmers. It's the people watching this who are saying,
the farmers are the ones impacted by the Labour Party's policy. They're the most important people in the entire damned argument.
I'm sorry. They will be saying, why am I paying 40% inheritance tax on 500,000.
Bill Rammer's on the end there, waiting to get a word in edgeways.
20% over 3.35
OK, you made that point. And Bill Rammer.
Barry's right, there is an issue of equity. But what really concerns me is there's a gulf of understanding about what is happening. Now, the Treasury has estimated that only 500 farms out of 209,000 will be affected by this. Before people shake their heads, that's been independently verified by the Office for Budget Responsibility and the Institute for Fiscal Studies. Now, if it could be bottomed out that only 500 farms out of... Hold on. If it could be bottomed out that only 500 out of 209,000 would be affected, would people in this audience support it?
Why do it at all?
I think they've
because people, they're very wealthy people who need to make a contribution towards our public services, and we need extra money for our hospitals, for our schools, for our local.
The farmers, hang on, Bill. It's all. Listen, hang on. It's all fair and well, for two people from the Labour Party tonight. Say, this is helping farmers. Yep. Farmers well off. They're farmers. They don't agree with you. They're the ones working in the industry. They don't feel that this supports them. Surely their voice counts.
But
let them speak.
Nobody in the audience answers my question. If it could be verified that it's only 500 farms, would you support it?
That's just not the case.
Because 2% of the people who are claiming the inheritance tax at the moment, just 2% of them, right, are raking it in to the tune of they're over 50% of the money that is being given away, and each of those 37 people are getting $3 million each.
Hang on, please. Hang on a sec. What we've got now is a clip of perhaps an unlikely ally for the farmers, and it was Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems. He spoke earlier. Let's take a listen.
Environment. And it's been so incredibly difficult for farming for so long. You've had to face rising energy bills, rising fertiliser bills, feed bills. Then you've had the botched transition from the basic payment scheme. Then you've had trade deals that prevent you from selling your produce into Europe but allow Australian, New Zealand farmers to undercut you here. And that's all before some of the worst weather and flooding in generations. You have had it hard, and this government doesn't seem to realise that.
There we go, the knight in shining armour riding in to save farmers is Ed Davey. Back to our two farmers on the front row here. You're shaking your head as if all politicians seem to make noises. You don't seem to think any of them are offering you any solutions.
Nice to see Ed Davey wasn't trying to jump into the Thames or something.
Missing his lycra.
I think that the fact there are probably 20,000 farms there today shows that there are more than 500 people affected by what's happened. I'm sure there's data cherry-picked that supports what you're saying. What it should probably do is probably be looked into, more means tested. So you got to probably discount in that big group, people who've got a big house and a few pony paddocks outside in that category. I think that does a big disservice to the people out there working very hard, long hours.
OK, so I'd like to bring in the lady there, please. You've been waiting very patiently. Over to you.
I just really are suspicious of Labour's agenda in total. I mean, it started off with looking after their own, giving the train drivers a huge increase. Then it moved on to children. They've always had a thing about grammar schools, so taxing the children. Then the poor pensioners, and that was because they didn't get their vote. And now it seems to be the farmers and the land, because they want the land themselves to house all the illegal immigrants. Take the land.
OK, well put. OK.